I believe that men are becoming more open to talking about things. I think that the idea of needing to be a stoic, pulling your boots up by your own bootstraps has changed. And I don't know if that's a generational change. I think that we're going to see more acceptance as generations continue. But I think that men like to hold things in, and women are very relational, so therapy for them is easier. It's let me go talk to someone about what I'm going through. Men are like to posture, right? So even if we do it in a way that's subconscious, and I think that men are definitely more hesitant than women to admit that they're going through something. But I really they're trying to think like of a ratio of male to female, referrals that we get, and it's probably split down the middle. Really, maybe a little bit more women, and mixing that up with couples, because that's both, right? But I have like I said, 75% of my client load is men, and that's also because men seek me out because I'm a male therapist. So there are women at our practice who have 75% women on their client load too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I assume there are probably more female therapists out there than men. Is that right?
Yes. Yep. That is right. Yeah. There's I don't know the numbers for that, but there's. But at our practice, we have a good mix. We probably 60-40, 60 female, 40 male, which most practices are not like that. Most are 80-90% women. So yeah, just the idea, like the relational idea and wanting to help people. It's kind of a nurturing trait, right? Mm-hmm. So we do see that more in women, but there are plenty of male, plenty of men out there who are therapists and Christian therapists too.
Yeah, and what are some of the things that men struggle with in particular? It's probably a lot to do with that respect and position and how they see themselves in the world. I would imagine, but I'm sure. You see a lot of things, but are there any things that are particularly male issues? Is there such a thing as a male issue?
Probably not a male issue, but per se. But there are issues that I do see more in men. Pressure, putting pressure on yourself. Although that's not a diagnosis per se, but stress is a big one. But then I have young mothers who come in who are at home with 4 kids all day, and that's pressure too. That's stress also.
Yeah.
Anxiety and depression are big ones for men. But I think that goes for both men and women. I as a Christian therapist, I'm seeing a lot of men either come in for, or it comes out later that they're dealing with challenges with pornography. I think that I don't want to say it's an epidemic, but it's a problem. And there's what do they say? 68% of Christian men have admitted to viewing pornography in the last 30 days. And
oh my gosh,
it's a lot,
I wouldn't have thought it would have been that high.
Yeah, and there's a significant, even pastors, right? So, and it's not to throw anyone under the bus. I mean, it's like, let's bring this in the light and talk about it, because it's an issue. So if someone comes in and they say, I want help with pornography, I can't treat them for pornography addiction per se, because that's not recognized yet. So, due to lobbying and all that. But what we do is we can work on compulsions, or we can work on anxiety, stemming from this.
I would imagine that's probably something that Christian men recognize as an issue more than the non-Christians, probably. Because, I think everyone knows it's not right, but I would imagine that Christians are probably a little more self-conscious of that being like a stronghold in their life, I would imagine. Yeah, they all pretty much, when they come in, either, hey, I haven't told my wife yet, or I know this is wrong, and this is just one of the things I want to work on. I think that the Christian men who come in, like, I'm not telling them, hey, this is wrong. As a therapist, my job isn't to tell you what to do. It's to help you work through things, right? So people are pretty self-aware about that. Through the lens of our faith, right? It's lust, right? So there's that, but also the idea that it's destructive in that, hey, I have an incredible amount of anxiety until I look at pornography.
or I look at it and I can only go 2 or 3 days and I have to look at it no matter how hard I try to stop. I just can't stop looking at it.
It's an addiction, just like alcohol or drugs.
Yeah. So it would be gambling, internet, compulsion, process addictions, things like that. It's not quite a substance, but it does have an impact on the brain in the same way. It's releasing a significant amount of dopamine, just like cocaine or methamphetamine would. But it's something that rewiring the brain takes time, but it can happen. So there's hope out there for people suffering with this.
And I think that's an important point, and it's I'm glad you brought it up, because I have seen it, at least these days, it seems to be a real prevalent issue. I mean, again, especially among Christians, because they perhaps are more open to sharing about it. But would you recommend that if someone is dealing with that, like that they battle on their own, or should they see someone about that? How would you kind of counsel someone that's suffering with that addiction?
Yeah, definitely bring that out into the light. You want to talk to someone, and if you're in a relationship and that let's say you're married and your spouse is not going to be okay with that, you don't necessarily need to tell them to be the first person to talk to about it. Sometimes I have guys come in and I say, look, why don't you, we're going to work through this, maybe get into an accountability group, talk to a pastor too, get some people on your team. And if you're not okay telling your spouse right now, because it could lead to, because some spouses, right, and rightly so, consider that infidelity, right? Infidelity of the heart, right? Yeah. So, let's work on this, get some time before you go and you tell your spouse. I don't believe you should keep secrets from your spouse at all, but I think sometimes it's a good idea to, hey, honey, look, I suffer with this, but it's been, 6 months and I'm actively treating it, right?
It shows that you're being a bit more proactive about it.
Yeah, and you're repentant about it, so, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And again, sort of last sort of comment on men and their mental health. Again, like I said, there seems to be an epidemic of men that are they bottle their emotions, and then it gets to the point where they're suicidal. And I'm just wondering, how often do you deal with people that, especially men that are dealing with suicidal thoughts? Is that maybe something that's more common these days?
So, I do sometimes have clients who tell me they have intents to harm themselves. And what we do at our practice is we use an assessment, and it's a pretty thorough assessment. And we look at, is there a plan? Is there a means to do so? And we will get people involved. That's the only time that we can break confidentiality. One of the only times we can break confidentiality is if someone says they have plans to hurt themselves or someone else. Mm-hmm. We take that very seriously. It doesn't happen often. Most of my 95% of my clients don't ever report a desire to hurt themselves. But it does happen, a few times a year. And what we do is we don't let them just walk out the door. We're canceling our clients after them to make sure that they're getting the help that they need, that we're contacting their family, or if we need to get the police involved, right? It really depends. Mm-hmm. And clients will thank us later. Hey, thanks for, I know, you called the police on me, but thank you for doing that because I'm still here. Yeah. And it's, to answer your question, I think there has been a rise in suicide. I mean, we could look at this, the stats, right? And, kind of see where those stats are coming from too. But I do think that there is a rise in suicide.